Abdul Carter is going to have more of an impact on this New York Giants defense than we probably think. I'll explain why coming up next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credentialed member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all of my written work. And as always, we welcome on in our Blue Crew community members, our everydayers, our newcomers, and everybody in between. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And if you're making us your first listen of the day, we thank you for that as well. Today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code Locked On NFL to get $20 off your first purchase. All right, Giant fans, day 2 of Giants training camp is in the books, and we got to talk about Abdul Carter. My gosh, wow. That's all I can say to sum up this segment. But seriously, I'm going to get into what I saw from Abdul Carter, what I've been seeing the last couple of days, some stats, and why this young man is potentially going to play a bigger role on the defense than I think a lot of us maybe think he might. Then in segment 2, we're going to take a look at Kayvon Thibodeaux. And I chose Kayvon because having done some research for an article that I wrote over on New York Giants on SI, I came across some interesting data that I'm going to share with you. I mean, this is very interesting data, and it kind of ties in a little bit with what I'm going to talk about with Carter in the first segment. So that's segment 2. And then, of course, segment 3, I have some takeaways, observations, thoughts from day 2 of Giants training camp. So that is what we have on tap for today. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. Let's get into it. All right, Carter. Let's talk about Abdul Carter. I made this observation while practice was going on that I haven't seen the Giants, or at least I don't remember them, at least this time last year in the summertime. I don't recall them blitzing as much as I have seen them blitz in 2 days of practice this summer. All right. Now, Carter has kind of been at the center of all that. They have sent him from the edge. They have sent him from inside the box. I mean, they have sent him from every which way. I mean, using him like a chess piece. And when you have a guy that is that versatile, that you can move around and get the same results, then you have a decided advantage. And, we've talked about Abdul Carter's versatility before, but I want to give you some data as to what exactly this young man could potentially bring to this Giants defense. Okay, before I go into the stats, I just want to give you a general stat for the New York Giants defense from last year, just to kind of keep in the back of your mind. Last year, the New York Giants blitzed 27.9% of the time, which was ninth in the league. They had a 21.8 pressure rate, which was 18th. Now, interestingly enough, 6 of the playoff teams from last year, they blitzed at least 30% of the time. So, the idea with the blitz is if you're going to send multiple guys at the quarterback, you want to make sure they're getting home. And Giants really didn't do a good job of that last year. So enter Abdul Carter. All right. Carter, as I mentioned, he could blitz from the outside. You can send him up the gut. There was a play that I'll talk about a little later on where he went up the gut and got pressure. It was quite the play. But Carter, according to Pro Football Focus last year, he lined up inside the box and outside. All right. He was primarily an outside linebacker, did some work still inside the box, which is the position he played early on in his career in Penn State. So last year he had a 17.6% pressure rate, according to Pro Football Focus, and a 21.1% pass rush win rate as an outside linebacker. Pretty good probably better than I think a lot of what the Giants had last year. Now, as an inside linebacker, and this is where Abdul Carter is really, I think, going to help this Giant defense take it to a whole new level. As an inside linebacker, Abdul Carter had a 24.7% pressure rate and a 19% pass rush win rate. Okay, those numbers, by the way, be a Pro Football Focus. So the point here is that he's not a one-trick pony. He's not, okay, line him up on the right side and just see what happens. You throw in Abdul Carter with Brian Burns, with Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeaux, Chauncey Golston, and good luck if you are an offensive coordinator figuring out how you're going to allocate your resources to slow this rush down. And we saw a lot of looks with Abdul Carter on the field during day 1 and day 2 of the practice, of training camp practice. And Carter, let me tell you, man on a mission, could not be stopped. Okay. I'll give you some highlights. There was one series in particular where on 3 straight pass rushes, Carter made fellow rookie Marcus Bowe look silly, just absolutely zipped right by him. That kid is just so fast off the snap. I'm going to be curious to see how, next gen stats times him with his get off rate, but it's going to be a quick one. I mean, a lot of times before the offensive lineman can even get up out of his stance, Carter is in his face and oftentimes past him. So that's going to be a problem for teams to handle. Now, there was another play in which Carter went up the gut. He was rushing from inside the box there, and he just completely bulldozed John Michael Schmitz, the center. Not good news for the offensive line. You don't want to see your center getting bulldozed, especially when your center, there are questions about his physicality. But Carter just right past him, just knocked him over into the backfield, and he disrupted the play. And we've seen a lot of that actually from the Giants pass rush this summer so far. And also going back to the spring, they have been very disruptive. Now, again, you can make the argument, well, they're not in pads yet, and pads are coming. I believe pads will start on Monday, if I'm not mistaken. But good luck dealing with that speed, because it's not just power. They've got speed. And speed, as you all know, that can be a team's best friend. All right. So when you've got guys that are in the backfield before the offensive lineman can get up out of their stance and retreat, that's going to give you a decided advantage. So Abdul Carter, that versatility, that quickness, that relentlessness, he's just going to be so good. I've been so excited about him. I know I've spoken about him many times on this program, but again, the effect he's going to have on this defense, he's going to open up a lot of things for the other guys. I really believe that. We're starting to see it, as the case may be. And, an interesting question that I know some people have asked me is, will Carter maybe end up starting ahead of Kayvon Thibodeaux? I'm going to talk more about Kavon Thibodeaux in the next segment, but I could see a world in which Carter really starts to bite into Thibodeaux's snaps, because as I'll tell you in the next segment, some interesting data came up when I was putting this show together and doing some research for an article that I wrote. And so, yeah, going to be interesting to see. So anyway, on that note, we'll take a break and I'll give you all that data about Kayvon Thibodeaux and if his role is in jeopardy or likely to change now that Abdul Carter is in the lineup. That's coming up right after this. Hey, Giant fans, we've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. Ever wonder what your view will actually look like before you buy? The app shows you a panoramic seat view so that you have zero surprises. With Game Time, the price you see is the price you'll pay. No hidden fees. Worried about what happens if plans change? The Game Time Guarantee has your back with a cancellation protection and a whole lot more. So go on and take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $20 off your first purchase. Game Time, last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, and we are in training camp, as you all know by now. And as long as there's a practice, we're going to bring you regular reports. So I haven't had a chance to really do much in terms of clips because for some reason my internet connection out on the field has been kind of sluggish. I'm not sure why, but I have my husband, the IT expert, working on that. But yeah, we will continue to bring you thoughts, observations, quotes. I've had, some exclusives. I spoke with Micah McFadden today, one-on-one, had a good conversation with him. So I'm going to work all that into the shows coming up. So hope you will check that out. And let's get into our next segment. I teased it a little bit in the last segment, Kayvon Thibodeaux. And is his role potentially in danger now that Abdul Carter is here? I was kind of surprised when I did the research on Kayvon Thibodeaux's production and his numbers. And I went back actually to 2023 to take a look at a few things. So I'm going to give you that data, all of this via NFL Pro, by the way. And but first, let me just start off by just saying Kayvon Thibodeaux was on the podium on Thursday, and he talked about finishing his sacks. He spoke about how last year he had 5 half sacks. And he said, if I had converted those to full sacks, my numbers would have been a lot better. So to help himself to be better, especially now that he's kind of in a contract year now, if you think about it, he took up wrestling. And the idea behind that is because wrestling allows for, sort of relates to tackling, the tackling technique that you use in football. And Thibodeaux is just going to basically, use that in an effort to get guys down to the ground. Now, here's the thing, as the data that I found will show, getting guys on the ground is one thing, but you got to get there first. So I'm going to lay some numbers on you. Okay. Again, according to NFL Pro, in 2023, when Thibodeaux had a career best 11 and a half sacks, there were 4 games in which he had 0 pressures. He had, an 8.8 pressure rate that he finished that season with, which was lower than the 12.3 pressure rate he had as a rookie. And remember, in his rookie season, he actually missed a couple of games. All right. Now, here's the stat that I found that I thought, wow, this really says a lot. Of Thibodeaux's 41 pressures in 2023, 11 of those, 11 came when he was unblocked. That's quite a chunk, okay? So, getting to the quarterback is one thing. Taking him down is another. And, Thibodeaux, he's going to play. I'm not going to sit here and say that, Carter is going to pass him on the depth chart, although he might by the time, we get to the end of the season. But Thibodeaux, he doesn't play much inside the box. According to Pro Football Focus, since he came to the NFL, he's only played 29 snaps inside the box. So the versatility is not there. Now, you might say, well, what if they play, Abdul Carter in the box and they put Burns and Thibodeaux on the outside? I don't know if that's going to work every time. Carter's strength seems to be on the outside. So that's going to give. Somebody's going to have to come off the field or take on a different role. Is it going to be Burns? Probably not. Is it going to be Thibodeaux? Could be. But the biggest thing with Thibodeaux, again, consistency. The idea is to beat the blocks. All right. And he just didn't do that. And, it's interesting when teams threw up roadblocks at him, whether it was a strength issue or a technique issue, I'm not sure exactly what it was. He struggled. So, to his credit, he's been working on it. He wants to be better. He wants that payday. He knows that, look, this is the last year of his rookie deal, although the Giants did pick up his option year. So he wants to be paid. Now, is he going to get that payday? He might. Is it going to be, a payday where he's paid like one of the top edge rushers? I don't think so. Because now you're really looking at, if he has a great year, you're really looking at maybe one good year, one solid year. And that year has to include him beating blocking. Okay. You can't just say, oh, I've got these inflated stats. And oh, by the way, 1/4 of my stats, I was untouched. That's not going to be taken into consideration when they figure out what he's worth. Okay. So, Thibodeaux, here's the other thing about him in 2023 that I found kind of interesting. The Giants had a plus 72.3 win probability when he had a sack, which was the 4th best rate in the NFL. But again, how much is Abdul Carter going to cut into that? How much is Abdul Carter going to affect that stat? There is room for that to change. So, a lot of people say, well, why don't the Giants just trade Thibodeaux? Get something for him now while they can. Because the Giants, for the first time in years, have a deep pass rushing group. And, those of you who think, well, how are they going to get them all on the field? They can't possibly get them all on the field. Bowen's going to have to earn his money and figure out a way to get these guys all on the field. All right. We've seen some looks where he's thrown multiple guys out there. I'm sure we will see more as the summer goes on. I don't know what's ultimately going to make it into the playbook once the regular season starts, but there have been some very intriguing looks. And, Abdul Carter, he's a guy I don't want to see on the bench. All right. I do not want to see him on the bench. I mean, speed, the power, the technique, the versatility. If they leave him on the bench for, more than a handful of snaps, then something is really, really wrong with their approach there. So we'll see how that plays out. But, again, I still think in the very beginning, the Giants will probably have like a rotation where Carter's going to spell guys, maybe in the very early on time. But I also think, having seen this kid, and the more I see of him, the more I'm thinking that, you know what? He's maybe a little further on. Initially I thought, well, Carter's role is going to be to kind of come in and sub a little bit here and a little bit there for Burns and Thibodeaux. I don't think that anymore. I mean, seeing this young man and what he's been able to do and the impact he's made when he's been out there, I don't think you can justify having him be a quote unquote super sub on that pass rush. And I just don't see it. I don't think it makes sense. I don't think it's a good use of their personnel. But again, that's up to Shane Bowen to figure it all out. And Shane Bowen might have to come outside of his comfort zone with regards to blitzing more. And so far, we've seen that. We've seen that not just with Carter and Thibodeaux and Burns. We've seen Micah McFadden do some blitzing. So going to be interesting to see how it all comes together over the next several weeks leading into week 1. But that pass rush, so far, so good. It is everything that has been advertised. All right, coming up next, Giant fans, some takeaways, some thoughts, observations from day 2 of Giants training camp. That's coming your way right after this. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football is back. So go on, fire up the group chat, get your draft board ready, and buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, and all the overreactions we live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. And this year, I am going to be playing on Yahoo Fantasy. And you should too, whether you're a first timer or a veteran making your millionth league. I've used Yahoo Fantasy for years, and I love how smooth the draft day experience is and the volumes of information that they provide to help team owners make the most informed decisions. And to celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. It all begins on August 4th. So stay tuned and get started by creating or joining a Yahoo Fantasy Football League at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Again, that's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Let's make this fantasy season the best one yet. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, and I will have a show for you this weekend. We'll just keep rolling right along. There's going to be plenty to talk about. And then on Monday, the Giants, I believe, are going to be in pads for the first time. So the pads will come on, and then we'll really be able to take a look at the offensive line versus defensive line. We'll be able to see more of the running game, although we saw a lot of the running game today. But again, you know, they're still in the acclimation period, so not a whole lot to gauge there, but still some takeaways, which I'll give you. And that's what I'm going to do in this segment. I'm going to talk about takeaways from day 2 of practice. All right, so just some quick hits here on guys that you wouldn't expect to stand out, but so far are off to a pretty good start. All right, I'm going to give you 2, one on each side of the ball. Tight end Greg Dulcich is one, and slot cornerback Nick Jones is the other. Now, Dulcich, he's caught, I want to say, I know he had 2 touchdown catches today, and I believe he had 1 yesterday. So he's been catching touchdown passes. But one of the things I saw with Dulcich, they had him lining up at fullback for some of the plays. And, you know, I'm curious to see if the Giants, who really haven't kept the fullback on this team, do they maybe look to keep one there? You know, can Dulcich make the roster? I still think he's, you know, he's got an uphill battle to make the roster, but you never know. That's why you go out there and you compete every day, right? Okay. Nick Jones, let's talk about him. Now, I thought initially his ticket was going to be as a special teamer, but he has been playing backup slot cornerback, and he has 2 interceptions in 2 days. All right, just does a really good job of reading the quarterback's eyes, getting into position, jumping routes. You know, he's just been really impressive looking. He had a pick of Jackson Dart today. He also had a pick of Dart yesterday. So that's a guy that, you know, suddenly I'm like, okay, maybe there might be a role for him on this team. All right, some other things. Speaking of Dart, Jackson Dart, 2 red zone interceptions in 2 days. So, look, you know, I don't want to pile on the kid. He's a rookie. He's still learning. You know, when he makes a mistake, generally they smooth it out and he doesn't make the same mistake twice. But Dart, what I continue to see from him is he doesn't know when to try to force a ball into a tight window and when not to. And his 2 interceptions were results of him trying to force a ball where he shouldn't have tried. All right. And then that's what practice is for. It's for you to get a sense of what throws you can make and what throws you can't make. So, you know, Brian Dable is like, look, that's why we practice. Mistakes are going to be made. You just work to correct them. So I'm not panicked just yet about Jackson Dart. But the thing that I continue to see with him is that he takes a little extra time to make his reads, right? Not painfully slow, but you'd like to see the ball come out of his hands a lot quicker. And we just haven't seen that so far, you know, dating back to the spring, actually. So Dart today, unofficially, I had him 4 of 8 with a touchdown pass and the interception. The touchdown pass was to Jalen Hyatt. And yeah, Dart has been rotating with Jameis Winston on the second team. So there's a battle going on there for sure. Interesting one. All right. Jalen Hyatt, just real quick. I'm not sure what happened to him, but he was on the sideline after running a few plays, and they were stretching out his left leg. Now, if you remember back in the spring, Jalen Hyatt had what was believed to be a left hamstring injury that happened on the first day of the mandatory minicamp. So he didn't finish out the minicamp. He was able to start the training camp, didn't land on PUP, but they were stretching him out there. You just wonder if there was some tightness, and is that going to affect him moving forward? So we'll keep an eye on that, because Jalen Hyatt, he's got to produce this summer. He's on a make or break year. Okay, we saw some one-on-one activity for the first time this summer. An interesting battle that's kind of developing. Offense versus defense. Wan'Dale Robinson versus Drew Phillips. All right. Wan'Dale had the play of the day, in my opinion. All right. It was a pass thrown by Russell Wilson. Wan'Dale was in the corner of the end zone. Drew Phillips was right on his hip, but wasn't able to break up the pass. And I don't know how Wan'Dale came up with this ball, but he dove, came up, held the ball up like a trophy, and the reception was good. And boy, did the offensive sideline, did they erupt in a celebration. That was a beautiful play. I know it's on the internet if you want to check it out, but that, in my opinion, was the play of the day. Now, not to be undone, Drew Phillips came back a little later on against Wan'Dale Robinson, and he picked off the pass. All right, so Drew Phillips, I absolutely like this kid. I really do. I like how, if he gets burnt, he comes back with a tenacity to kind of make up for it. The interesting thing about those two, as you guys probably know, they both played at the University of Kentucky. So they're former college teammates. And that spirited competition that maybe started in school at Kentucky has followed them to the Giants and the NFL. So that was just a really cool battle. And Wan'Dale, like I said, with the play of the day, in my opinion. All right, let's talk about Malik Neighbors. Now, the Giants did do some one-on-ones, all right, one-on-one drills, defensive backs versus receivers. Malik Neighbors absolutely made Paulson Adebo look silly twice on one-on-one situations. Just there was the second one, Malik Neighbors kind of put a move on Adebo. It was like, I can't explain it. I can't illustrate it, but it was a shifty type of move where Adebo thought Neighbors was going to go one way, and Neighbors kind of juked him back and went the other way. And he was able to get into the end zone for the score. So Neighbors, if his toe was bothering him or whatever, you can't tell, because that kid's going out there making plays. He did have one drop pass today. The ball hit him in the hands. It was a little ahead of him. But other than that, Malik Neighbors is Malik Neighbors. Another kid who, if he stays healthy, is going to have a huge, huge year. So that was kind of nice to see. Now, ultimately, once pads go on, we'll see offensive line versus defensive line. That's something I definitely want to see. But, that you need the pads for that to happen. But overall, the second day of training camp, I thought the defense was a little sloppier than they were on the first day. And I say that because they jumped off sides like 4 times during the course of the 11-on-11s. And by the way, there were something like 4 11-on-11s in this practice. So they're really putting an emphasis on the team drills early on in the practice, But overall, it's coming along. It is a work in progress, and we will keep you updated here on the Locked On Giants podcast. So hope you will keep tuning in. Before we say goodbye, the Locked On NFL Top 100 is here, voted on by the NFL hosts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Our Top 100 was formed by the experts that cover these teams and players every day. Find the full list on Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Giant fans, that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Giants. I'll be back over the weekend with another show as I continue to bring you updates from New York Giants training camp. Until then, have a good one, everybody.